question: how to never regret anything.
We often trap ourselves into these rigid frameworks of thinking, I'm living my life wrong, or I'm living it right. You should not only consider whether you are living right or wrong, but simply observe how you are living now, how you feel about this way of living, how you feel about your life in this context, how you generally feel, what your state of mind is, and whether you like your life or not. And do you see what you're missing out on by living this way? Because when we live with any specific worldview, as we are living now, we're always missing out on something. For instance, right now, I'm spending time with you. We're using our current lifetime for this stream. This is our worldview at this moment. The worldview that we're on a retreat, immersing ourselves in the present moment and discovering new aspects of being, but at the same time, in this second, we're missing out on going to drink beer with some guys at the store. Well, hypothetically speaking, we're missing out on that. And we're missing out on a lot of other things. But here's the question: what are we aware of missing out on in this very moment? Why am I pointing towards this? Listen, if a person is currently engaged in something and devoting all their attention to it without realizing what they're missing out on at the same time, they won't be able to fully appreciate what they're engaged in. But if I'm here with you right now, and I realize that in this very moment, by choosing to do what I am doing, I've missed opportunities like swimming in the sea, chatting with others, or other activities such as talking with my family and friends, or going to a cafe. I've missed all these things now. If I'm aware of what I've missed, then the activity I chose over those options must be truly significant to me, deserving my full attention. Realizing this allows me to fully focus on what I'm doing at the moment, without being distracted by thoughts of what else I could be doing. After all, I've already missed out on something, but then it's useless to devalue what I'm currently engaged in. Therefore, it's important to always be aware that when you're engaged in a specific activity, it's natural to be missing out on something else. If you've already started doing something and are missing out on some other activity that you also enjoy doing in life, it means now you're not just engaged in some useless thing. It shows that this activity means something to you. So give your full attention to whatever you're doing. But if in that moment you start getting distracted by something else, or you find your mind wandering, just consider whether what you're doing is truly necessary and valuable to you. Perhaps the reason you don't see the value in what you're doing right now is that you're not aware of what you're missing at this moment. Often, when someone is engaged in an activity, they might be told, you're not appreciating what you're doing right now. You don't value it. But the truth could be that they simply aren't aware that they don't value it. Why? Because they don't see what they're missing out on. But as soon as they realize what they're missing at that moment, they understand that what they sacrificed for must be really significant, considering they gave up something else for it. The issue isn't just about choosing one thing over another, with the fear that it might turn out to be a poor choice or cause regret. It's more about the tendency to feel regret or encounter problems, because even when we're focused on one thing, we often still think about something else. This continual distraction, while engaged in a specific activity, often leads to undervaluing it and developing negative perceptions about it, such as thinking, oh, I wasted my time. If we want to learn how to be fully present in what we're doing right now, we need to understand that what you're doing right now is not just a random stretch of time, of which you might think there's plenty to spare. It's a specific event of the present moment, A moment in which you focus all your attention, all your life, and in doing so, you're choosing it over something else that could also be a part of your life. So then, what's the point of being engaged in one thing and thinking about something else? Because then, when you step out of it, you might reflect and say that you spent your time poorly, inefficiently, or didn't achieve what you had hoped for. But often, this happens not because we're getting less than we should, but because at the moment we're involved in something. We don't realize what we're sacrificing. We end up not valuing what we currently have, our minds drifting to other things instead. Ultimately, we just waste our life's time, not fully appreciating its true value. Thus, we often find ourselves in phases of life, periods in which we don't bring any value to our own lives or to those around us. However, as we start to understand that committing to one thing means missing out on another, it becomes foolish not to value and not to be fully engaged in our chosen activities. Then, throughout our lives, we begin to spend our time in the most effective way possible, utilizing it for our own benefit and for everything that surrounds us. And by doing this, we avoid feeling regret and the sense that we've just wasted our time for nothing.
Question: does this imply that we should concentrate by just doing one thing at one time?
If you happen to get distracted by your phone, for instance, while eating, it's not a big deal. You just need to understand what you're missing out on at that moment. It's like this. Let's say I'm eating and I realize I urgently need to respond to a text on my phone, something work-related, and so on. I pick up the phone and start replying. I'm just aware of what I'm sacrificing in that moment, right? So I understand that in that moment, I'm sacrificing the intensity with which I experience the taste of the food I'm eating. I'll still taste it, but not as intensely. And when you shift your focus to one thing, you should be aware of what you're losing at that moment. If you're multitasking, for instance, there are some exceptions where people can do two things at once without thinking about anything else. This is also possible, but it's quite difficult. Take, for example, artists who can draw with both their left and right hands simultaneously. The right hand draws one face, while the left hand draws another. Can you imagine? Two tasks are being performed at the same time, and attention is evenly distributed between the two. But if, at that moment, the person steps out of this state of focus, let's say they get distracted. But how can he get distracted? He might start thinking more about one of those portraits. Then everything gets disrupted. He draws this way and flows in rhythm with life. One hand draws naturally, while the other hand is drawing a portrait. If, by chance, he starts to hesitate internally and his personal identity interferes, he loses his connection with life's rhythm. When he starts to focus only on the portrait he's drawing, let's say with his left hand, things begin to go wrong. That hand stops, chaos ensues, and the process just falls apart. So, to be able to multitask effectively, you also need to learn how to be thoughtless. Because thoughts always pull our attention towards one thing, making us believe that's what we should focus on. But that's not bad either. It's useful too, just like concentrating on one thing. Understand that these are all life's options available to you, which you can utilize and alternate in your life. If, for instance, you're on your phone and eating at the same time, it doesn't mean you're a bad person, or an unconscious person, or someone who's not in the moment, or whatever else. It simply means you are here, and you're both on your phone and eating. In that moment, you're just missing out on the taste of the food. And that's okay. It's just how it is. Just like that.